Hi, welcome to this podcast. We're going to look at reasons for adoption of the double entry system, and I've put this under the incomplete records section because this is quite a common question when somebody is doing incomplete records, either in an IGCSE examination or in a A-level examination. Okay, legally, there is no legal requirement for a business to adopt a double entry system, although most businesses do at some point as they get bigger. In fact, I would say that all businesses over a certain size do. So there are clearly some advantages for adopting a full double entry system, but equally, there are many disadvantages. So it's quite normal for a small business to not adopt it. For example, when I was 11 years old, we were doing quite a typical experiment in biology at that point, where you have to prick your finger, smear some blood onto a slide to view under a microscope, and I assume that I overly pricked my finger because it was bleeding quite significantly, and several people paid me some money to put blood onto their microscope. Now, that business did not require any double entry records. I know that 6 people paid me, and they paid me 15 pence each. I gave the product, the blood from my finger, straight away, and they gave me the money straight away, and that was the end of it. However, as businesses get bigger, the first thing is that for tax with governments, you have to provide records which they can verify that your profits are accurate, so that they can then calculate accurate tax figures. And it is a large element of the proof that you are doing a double entry system beyond a certain point. Stock exchange listings normally require companies to have a rigorous double entry system. Investors such as banks and things like debenture holders would also expect to see it with a business above a certain size. And finally, something that's becoming increasingly important, although rarely mentioned at A-level, money laundering and accounting linked to money laundering globally is becoming a much bigger issue, and the police will go in and look at companies' records when there is a suspicion that they have been used by criminal agents around the world, and they would expect a rigorous double entry system. Otherwise, they are going to be highly suspicious of the actions of the owner. Okay, so that's where we stand legally. It's not something you have to do. It's not something that's sensible for certain size businesses. And we'll look at the advantages, though, as a business develops, as to why all businesses do move eventually to a double entry system. Okay, the main reasons firms adopt. The first one is when they are starting to get an increase in credit sales and credit purchases. And prior to that, you can just basically get away with a cash book. Okay, but once you start to have customers owing you money and an increasing number of customers owing you money, then you need to know how much a customer owes you at any time, partly to do with making sure that you have effective credit control and you don't just let customers owe you large sums of money they might never be able to repay, but also just in terms of collecting the money off people. If you are just relying on memory, at some point you will forget that you've made a credit sale to somebody and you will never be able to collect the money. As the turnover of a business increases and the number of employees involved increase, there is an increasing chance that you are going to get fraud and errors occurring, both of which can only really be detected if you have a rigorous double entry system. The whole point of the double entry system is that things go in twice, and therefore you can check that half of records are not being missed or deliberately altered by somebody within the business. Okay, the double entry system allows us to do checks on the integrity of the financial records. So things like control accounts and bank reconciliations can't be done unless we are doing the full double entry system. And therefore you can't detect where the errors are in accounts. It's just basically relying upon somebody originally writing a list out correctly that we are using as our own check. At some point, and this is quite significant, it significantly speeds up the generation of financial information. So imagine a business of the size of Apple, for example, going through all of its invoices to generate year-end financial accounts. Well, clearly that is going to take a lot of time. They're going to have piles and piles of paper they go through, and they're going to have to go through every bit of paper, put it into the right pile, and then add up the totals to generate revenue, to generate the information on their purchases. And at some point in the evolution of a business from small to large, the time taken gathering the information from source documents is greater than the time that would be taken in actually doing the double entry system. And final big reason as well is it's quite easy once you are doing a double entry system to find out the management information you require to effectively manage a business of size. If you have the double entry system, you can just balance off some accounts and you will have the information for the year to date available to, for example, tell customers how much they owe them and send out statements of accounts, to calculate the profit for the year using part year financial statements, and to know things that are important to a business, such as their current cash balances in both the bank and in physical cash. Okay, so they are the reasons why eventually the double entry system gets adopted by all businesses. Now, although obviously there are a lot of advantages to adopting it, the reason why some small businesses do not adopt it are because there are disadvantages to doing it. And those disadvantages relate to things like skills required. Okay, double entry system isn't that easy to do. Not everybody has the capability to do it. Not everybody has the training to do it. So, for example, employing a full-time bookkeeper and more expensively a full-time accountant is a large expense to a business. If you are running a business and you are cleaning windows for people and going out every day cleaning windows, if you were to employ a full-time accountant to do your accounting and records, that'd probably be greater than your complete revenue over the course of a year. Even if an employee decided to do it themselves, or if an owner decided to do it themselves, there would be significant training expenses and they would lose a significant amount of time from running the business if they were to go off and get trained to do their own accounting records. And also that would take the owner away from tasks which they are better suited to. Most people who own a business are generally very good at sales and probably not so good at doing things like accounting. Okay, there would also be costs of IT associated very often in the modern world with doing double entry, and they can be significant. And compared to what a lot of businesses do, I've got a lot of friends who are builders, they keep their financial records in lists in a book. Okay, and doing a full set of double entry is time consuming compared to what they currently do. So the negatives of doing double entry are practical, and they, for certain businesses up to a certain size, they do outweigh the advantage of moving to a double entry system. Now, particularly for those of you doing A level, I think it's important to think about your evaluation when you are talking about whether a business should adopt a full double entry system. And the first thing that's important, look at the information on the business. Very often these businesses are experiencing, for example, potential fraud, theft of goods, and that should really come out in your answer. The business is now large enough for a fraud of £1,000 to have occurred. That is part of your evaluation for this business. And there are also some things to think about that to a degree lessen the impacts of the negatives. So for example, you can now use online accounting packages and systems for as little as £50 a month to rent that will cover off the double entry and allow you to get a lot of those advantages from having the management information available for a business to use during the course of the year. So it's not necessary now for a business to go out and spend £250,000 on a full accounting system. That use of a online system that already exists for maybe £50 might well be sufficient to gain the advantages and to miss out on a lot of the disadvantages. And the other thing businesses can consider, which reduces the impact and cost, is there are now many accountants available throughout the world who specialise in working for a number of businesses at the same time. So you don't need to pay the full cost of a full accountant to be constantly involved in the business. You might pay for effectively 2 days of an accountant every month, and that person will then spread their time over a number of businesses. And that reduces the need for full-time employees and reduces the fixed cost element for a business. They can reduce the number of days if the business starts to do less well, for example. And those people might specialise in a number of areas. So, for example, there are specialists who do payroll and calculation of employees' wages. They might just do credit control and look at making sure that you are keeping on top of and contacting your customers who owe you money, or they might just specialise in doing the final accounts for the business, and the rest of it just gets done by the owner on a more ad hoc basis. Okay, right, I hope that answers some of your questions. Obviously, if I'm your teacher, email me. And obviously I will have given you some questions to do, some written questions to do in relation to this. Thank you very much for your time. Goodbye.